Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Folks, as we look into the Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas in front of Trump's hotel, and of course, using the Cybertruck that is manufactured by Elon Musk's company, we have a lot of questions, but I think that the Las Vegas police, as well as the FBI, did an outstanding investigation on this. They waited to follow the evidence and have the evidence show them who they had, what the most likely cause of this was. And they didn't give in to social media or broadcast media. They did what they were supposed to do as law enforcement. They did an outstanding investigation. And one of the things that we're looking at is this man right here, Matthew Allen Leibelsberger, a Green Beret, a highly decorated member of the armed forces. Now, it's come out that one of the things they believe occurred was that Matthew was suffering from PTSD. And this explosion in front of this Trump hotel was meant to sort of point a finger at many things that he finds wrong with the armed forces, with the leadership in this country. And he meant this to be a suicide, in essence, but he didn't want, according to the investigators, to cause loss of life of others, but he wanted to send a message out there. One hell of a way to send a message, but that's what he wanted. And we're going to dig into this a little deeper. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your seats, hold on to your loved ones, because you're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone.
There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
And now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA and college basketball, NHL to UFC. Head to BetOnline today and don't forget to use promo code BLEAV, that's believe, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online. The game starts here. So, folks, when we look into this case, it's very sad, but how many more service members are out there suffering PTSD, untreated PTSD? And here's a highly, highly decorated sergeant major, Green Beret. And apparently his wife had just indicated that she wanted to leave him. And he has a newborn baby. So all of those things that drive people over the edge, that made him undoubtedly suicidal, they were present in this situation. I know many of us think, and many of us thought, that this was connected to the New Orleans attack on New Year's, where the person drove, Shamsuddin Jabbar drove a pickup truck and ran over 14 people. However, this is looking a great deal different than that. The soldier who died in the Cybertruck left writing criticizing the government. Law enforcement says Matthew Leibelsberger left behind a diary of activity on his phone. Those who knew and served with Leibelsberger described a patriotic soldier. So it wasn't he was no, he wasn't trying to take other people down, but he was suffering himself. Two letters in the phone app suggest a possible motive in the blast. This was found in the Cybertruck. In one letter, he tells fellow service members, veterans, and all Americans, it's time to wake up because the country's leadership is weak and only serves to enrich themselves. A second letter appeared to shed more light on Leibelsberger's thinking. We in the United States of America, the best country to ever exist, but right now we are terminally ill and headed towards collapse. This was not a terrorist attack, it was a wake-up call. Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence. What better way to get my point across than a stunt with fireworks and explosives? I need to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took. Spencer Evans, a special agent in charge of the FBI's Las Vegas division, added that the investigation, along with a consultation with the Army, determined that Leibelsberger likely had post-traumatic stress disorder, and that investigators are aware that there were potential family issues or personal grievances in his own life that may have been contributing factors. Leibelsberger expressed other grievances, including about conflicts elsewhere in the world and domestic and societal issues. He cautioned the investigators continue to go through evidence found on the cell phone. And Las Vegas Sheriff Kevin McMahill said investigators have been unable to access a second phone found in the Cybertruck. Evans said authorities have not established any firm connections between the Cybertruck explosion and the alleged attack that occurred in New Orleans hours earlier that killed 14 people on Bourbon Street. So many folks, of course, thought that those two events were connected because they both were from the same Fort Bragg. They had both been there at the same time. There were other connections. They had been in Afghanistan together. But we are being told by investigators that none of that was true, that they do not feel that either of these events were in any way connected. So what does that tell us about our armed forces, the people that are protecting us? Well, one of the things it tells us is that they're screaming out for help. He mentioned that he had some issues, both from the combat, the friends that he had lost in the Army, and the people that he had actually killed himself, which gave him a level of PTSD that he was suffering with. This wasn't meant, as we said, I will repeat, this wasn't meant to kill people in front of the Trump Hotel. It was meant to send a message. And Leibelsberger was perfectly willing to die by sending that message.
Explosion at the Trump Hotel on Las Vegas Boulevard yesterday. Our work never stopped. As many of you went to sleep last night, and I just want to give you an update on a lot of what it is that we found through the processing of the Cybertruck. This is a joint investigation involving the FBI, the ATF, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and these folks worked through the night and found a lot of stuff that is very useful for this investigation. As you look at this Cybertruck here, we had to transport this down to our fleet services so that we could really get through this thing. And I remind you that the subject inside wasn't able to be removed for a very long period of time because he was burnt beyond recognition. And so as we continue to move through this, I'm going to talk a little bit about his identity and what we believe, but I would like to highlight a couple of things that the teams found inside of the Cybertruck that are useful to the investigation.
You know, one of the things I just want to point out in the for the professionalism of the Las Vegas police, who I thought were outstanding. They refused to identify him until he had been in fact identified through DNA. So they knew they had identification vis-a-vis a passport and some other documentation in the vehicle. And they also had tattoos that were consistent with Leibelsberger. But they weren't ready to make a confirmed ID, although the media and social media had identified him way ahead of the Las Vegas Police Department. But they don't have the option to make those mistakes. If they made a mistake and it turned out not to be him, they are left holding the bag, not social media and not the mainstream media. I just want to point that out.
And that, first and foremost, is a military identification. We also found a passport. We found a Desert Eagle 50 caliber semi-automatic pistol. And if you'll notice on a lot of these guns that we're going to talk about here, they're almost just burnt beyond recognition as well. There's a SLR model B30 semi-automatic firearm, number of fireworks that were still in the vehicle that had to be removed. Notably, we found an iPhone and a smartwatch, and then several credit cards were also in the name of our subject. Our subject is 37-year-old Matthew Livelsberger. He's of Colorado Springs, Colorado, born July 22nd of 1987. Now, as you'll see here on a picture of his driver's license, let's see, the question really still remains for me, and I know that there's a lot of you folks in the media that are identifying this person as the person in our vehicle. As I mentioned to you already, his body is burnt beyond recognition, and I do still not have confirmation 100% that that is the individual that was inside of our vehicle. And so as I'm calling it now, the subject or person of interest, I will not come back until I have the confirmation through DNA. Or
at this point, they do have the confirmation from DNA that that is in fact a Leibelsberger.
Or medical records that this is indeed, in fact, the subject inside of the vehicle. Now, further complicating this identification of this individual, we also discovered through the coroner's office that the individual had sustained a gunshot wound to the head prior to the detonation of the vehicle. One of the handguns was found at his feet inside of the vehicle. Obviously, in how we're trying to identify him, and I'm feeling comfortable to give you this information, is a tremendous amount of substantial evidence to include he rented the Turo vehicle. There are two tattoos, one of which was on the stomach and one of which is on the arm, that we can see bits and pieces of it as in comparison to what it is that we now know he had on his body. That has given us a lot of confidence that this is, in fact, the same person, as well as which the clearly obvious, which is the credit cards, the military identification, the passport. And then furthermore, as you'll see here in just a very short period of time, we tracked his movements from Colorado to Las Vegas. And in a number of the photographs that we were able to determine, he was the individual that was driving the vehicle. And also, I'd like to iterate this point to you. We still have only ever seen him in this vehicle, and we're not aware of any other subjects involved in this particular case.
You know, I think that they did an outstanding job, because one of the things that, this is the path he took, and they were able to track the Cybertruck at all the locations where he charged the Cybertruck.
Colorado on December 30th.
You can see they're going to go over
on the
this now.
31st of December, the truck was charged in Trinidad, Colorado, Las Vegas, New Mexico, and Albuquerque and Gallup, New Mexico. On January 1st, the truck was charged in Holbrook, Flagstaff, and Kingman, Arizona. We last tracked the truck in Kingman at 05:33 yesterday morning. The truck was first spotted in Las Vegas at 7:29 a.m. yesterday. And Carlos will pull up a picture of the truck pulling onto Fashion Show Drive here. And that picture was observed at about 7:34 a.m. We know that he pulled into the Trump valet, and I believe we have a video of that. You can see the Cybertruck highlighted there. So through extensive surveillance video, we were able to track him leaving there, and we know that he went to several different places along Las Vegas Boulevard, and he spent some time in a parking lot of a business near Flamingo and Las Vegas Boulevard. We didn't have a video of the truck pulling back onto Las Vegas Boulevard from the Sands. You see that there? That's north on the boulevard from Sands at 8:39, where he then immediately heads to the Trump Hotel, pulls into the valet area, and as of course you all know, the explosion occurs within 17 seconds of his arrival at the valet.
So as you could see, the Las Vegas Police Department, with their partners in the FBI, did an outstanding job in tracking this Cybertruck. And, one of the things that they're, of course, looking to do is to show that there's not a nexus between what occurred in New Orleans and what occurred in Las Vegas. And that is very important because many people, of course, looking at the conspiracy theorists and were they connected? They were at the same camp, Fort Bragg. They were in Afghanistan at the same time. They have not found any connection between Shamsud Jabbar and Matthew Leibelsberger. And when they take a look at his life, his current life, his wife was leaving him. He just had a newborn baby, suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and possibly even TBI, a traumatic brain injury. So these are some of the things that we don't hear as civilians in regards to our armed services and what they deal with on a day-to-day basis based upon their service. And I believe that other service members, they counsel each other, they support each other. But is that enough? In my opinion, no, it's not enough. We, as a country, we as our government, we need to support our armed services people, especially when they come back from these horrific sites, Afghanistan, Iraq, and they're involved in war. And what does that do to someone's mentality? What does that do to someone's well-being? What does that do to someone's life for the people, family members left behind? These are some of the questions that we have.
Federal agents have nailed down DNA and medical records to confirm that Leibelsberger is indeed the person whose charred remains were found in the Cybertruck. Now 8 News Now investigator Kyle Payne joining us live in studio with what we know about Leibelsberger now the day, Kyle, after that deadly explosion.
Brian, information flooding into our newsroom since the moment we got news of the explosion. A lot of it about the man police and the FBI say is responsible. Matthew Allen Leibelsberger, 37 years old, and a highly decorated Green Beret.
There are 2 tattoos, one of which was on the stomach and one of which is on the arm, that we can see bits and pieces of it as in comparison to.
In comparison, Clark County Sheriff Kevin McMahill says, to tattoos belonging to 37-year-old Matthew Leibelsberger, which police and federal agents were using to link the 37-year-old with Wednesday's explosion. Leibelsberger, a highly trained, highly decorated military man since 2006, who served as a Green Beret, a unit that works to counter terrorism abroad, serving most recently in Colorado and in Germany.
We've already received thousands of tips related to this incident.
Spencer Evans is the special agent in charge of the Las Vegas office of the FBI.
But one of the tips that we received just today relates to information alluding to this subject's personal experiences related to his time and activity in the military.
He was awarded a total of 5 Bronze Stars, including one with a Valor device for courage under fire, a combat infantry badge, and an Army combination medal with Valor. His military ID, passport, driver's license photo, and weapons found in the charred remains of this Tesla Cybertruck, along with what was left of Leibelsberger's body, which was so badly burned it took a good while for police to get him out of it.
They just live an ordinary life with their newborn and take and walk sometime. That's really all I know of him.
Leibelsberger's neighbor, Kenny Mack, knew something was up when she heard a helicopter circling above her neighborhood. She says she doesn't see him around the neighborhood as much as she does his wife, who she coincidentally just began working out with at the gym. She knows him to be tattooed, which tracks with information and photos issued at a Metro Police press conference earlier Thursday.
It's one of those things where you find it hard to believe, you know? You hear like it could be your neighbor, and then that's just really sinking in at this point that it literally could be your neighbor.
Well, the FBI has said they haven't found a connection between what happened at Trump International and this week's attack on Bourbon Street. Both men responsible are U.S.-born military servicemen who served in Afghanistan around the same time frame.
So is that disturbing to anyone that Leibelsberger and, of course, Shamsid Jabbar both were U.S. Army service members? It should be disturbing to everyone. You know, I as a 27-year veteran with the NYPD, and I'm not comparing that service at all to the military, because the military is probably, considering what Leibelsberger had seen, probably times 10 what I've seen in my police career. And especially he was involved in combat, and he was a Green Beret, and you saw the medals he had, you know, and he's what we would call the real deal, you know. So then what do we as citizens, how do we try to help these people? Sending this message, you know, he really obviously was disturbed, but sending this message in the way that he did screams out, not just for him, but others, because he can't help him anymore, but others that have gone through combat, others that have come back to this country after service. Don't we owe it to them to monitor them, to get them the help that they need? I think we do, you know. And in this incident in Las Vegas with the Cybertruck explosion, it sort of made it clear that he wasn't looking to hurt anyone else, but he was looking to send a message. And did he send a message? I mean, this is from News Nation, and they talk a little bit about the PTSD and perhaps even the traumatic brain injury that he was suffering.
Division and SVP of the Soufan Group, Christopher O'Leary, and retired FBI agent and attorney Bobby Chacon. Gentlemen, welcome tonight. Thank you so much for joining. We're getting a clearer picture of the motive. He called this a wake-up call. He made clear he was looking to make a spectacle to grab the attention of Americans. What are your thoughts on just what he claimed his motive to be here? Mr. O'Leary, I'll start with you.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not surprised by it. You know, first with the PTSD and the traumatic brain injury, we've had 20 plus years of conflict, and you know, we have a number of individuals like the Master Sergeant who have all this scar tissue that's built up over time, and their susceptibility to something like this is increased. There's quite a bit of research done on this, so you know, that's concerning. But the other thing, I think he was very deliberate in his actions. Whether he had a grievance against incoming President Trump or not, it was very symbolic that he was going to take a Tesla Cybertruck, parked in front of the Trump hotel, but have limited scale violence to try to minimize any real destruction, because this was symbolic. It was a cry. It was, you know, really explaining his grievance and his frustration. And terrorism, I know I put this in the political violence category and not really terrorism. It's theater. It's intended to be symbolic and to influence an audience beyond its immediate victims. And thankfully, there were no victims here.
Thankfully, Mr. Chacon, his motive, much more political than we thought, calls leadership weak, says the country is heading for collapse. Did that surprise you at all?
No, it didn't. I mean, I think a lot of soldiers returning from the Middle East feel that way. The mission there has kind of devolved into a very nebulous kind of objective. We don't really know what we're doing over there anymore. The objectives are not clear. We're still there after regime change. ISIS is now in Syria. You know, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban is back in Afghanistan. So we really don't know after 20 years of war what we're doing in there, why we're there. And a gentleman like this, a soldier, comes back, you know, and the ultimate frustration is he's losing friends and he's watching friends and comrades get blown up and dislimbed and killed. And he blames it on the leadership back home because they're doing what they're being told to do, but there's no clear mission anymore.
Christopher, we're learning more about the suspect. We know he was on approved leave for the Wall Street Journal. He was expected to go back to Germany on January 4th. He was an active duty soldier, a decorated soldier. But in his notes app, he shows a completely different ideology than the time he was serving. What do you make of that?
Well, I haven't read through all of the notes, but listen, I think he probably thought he was doing some kind of patriotic duty, which is consistent with his lifelong service to this country. This is an act of desperation, but this is not in any way like, you know, the attacker in New Orleans who was carrying out an ISIS ideology. This was an act of political violence by somebody who has got mental scars and he had some serious life changes, which made him susceptible to carry out an act of desperation like this. But, you know, I can't get inside of his head now, but my guess would be he thought he was doing something that was purposeful to draw attention to the wrong direction he thought this country was going in.
And Bobby, let's talk more about the spectacle that the suspect claimed. Again, Tesla Cybertruck outside Trump Hotel. Now that we see the political notes that he made, should they explore that the location choice was deliberate here, where he drove 1,000 miles to get to the Trump Hotel?
Well, certainly it was deliberate, and certainly the vehicle was deliberate. Both the location and the vehicle were deliberate, but it was also deliberate that he didn't want to hurt anybody. He wanted to make a spectacle, as Christopher said. So I think that, you know, I mean, I would investigate, you know, his life was gone. I would investigate others in similar situations if they feel that way. You know, these soldiers have to start being, you know, counseled and given the help that they need. Clearly, in some of his writings that I've seen, he shows some PTS signs, and so, you know, and the reports of a TBI are consistent with his actions. And I think that, you know, I think it was a very deliberate thing. He was going to take his own life, and he wanted in that mission of taking his own life, he didn't want it to just go quiet. He wanted to have his last kind of statement, his last urging to the nation to be heard. And now it's being heard because here we are talking about it on national news. And so I think it was deliberate, and I think we are carrying out his kind of last wishes.
You know, so it's very, very interesting, but yet sad. You know, here's this decorated soldier, Green Beret, and I guess he can only see he was trying to send a message, and in the process of trying to send that message, he was going and perfectly willing, and he did, in fact, take his own life. And you heard Bobby Chacon say, retired FBI agent Bobby Chacon say, he had PTSD and perhaps TBI, which is traumatic brain injury. So all of those things we cannot ignore. So is there a nexus between the Las Vegas case and the New Orleans case? It doesn't seem so at this point. But we just wanted to cover this to clear up all these things. And we think that the Las Vegas PD, as well as the FBI and the ATF, they did a fantastic job investigating this. Folks, this Police Off the Cuff Real Crime Stories. If you're not subscribed, hit that red subscribe button on the screen. Give us a thumbs up. Ring the bell. Hit the like button. Share us with your friends and your family. And if you're not, you want to join us on our Patreon, we have 4 different levels. We also, our YouTube channel membership, we have 5 different levels. You can become part of the Police Off the Cuff family. Have a great day, everyone. I'm Bill Cannon from Police Off the Cuff, and God bless.
One episode.
this ain't enough.